by far, one of the top stories that emerged out of the conference weekend was that the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, making a video announcement and saying that he's submitting legislation to make Bitcoin legal tender. And there were, tears in the audience as this happened. And there were tears of joy, tears on stage, tears everywhere shared. But, a lot of enthusiasm and positive sentiment. But Emily, there are also some misgivings in this, and that you had spoken about earlier.
Yes, I definitely do not pretend to be an expert on this government, but I think it is worth asking why a government would do something like this, what's in it for the government, and what kind of government is it? So, there definitely, if you just, do some reading about El Salvador, and there have been some concerns about consolidation of power, and yeah, I think it's just worth asking these questions, because I think there's been a lot of talk about how Bitcoin is going to increase freedom and Bitcoin is going to increase liberty, and what kind of government is using Bitcoin for its own ends. So I just think these are questions that are worth asking.
It's the positivity is great, but it's also important to ask some clear questions. But Lawrence, another angle was, this is really bullish sentiment having El Salvador potentially have Bitcoin as legal tender, but the markets, they're positive that they didn't really move the dial.
No, not in the least bit. Here and there, but there are a lot of things. I mean, speaking of situations, we of course had China over a couple of days ago cracking down on some of the influencer accounts in crypto, and Janet Yellen. Interest not the worst thing in the world, and that of course means that curbing inflation might be something that she could foresee in the coming future, and that of course hurts the narrative of Bitcoin. And also, just the fact that you do have this crackdown on influencers, and the Chinese government showing that it's not thrilled with Bitcoin. In a way that's I don't want to say not thrilled with Bitcoin, but that they're going to take some efforts in crypto, that sort of dampens things a bit, and of course it dampens the market. We saw low options trades in volumes of low spot volumes. So any kind of good news or any kind of let's just say positive news for Bitcoin coming out of El Salvador, whatever that might mean, it's just no one cares right now.
Well, a question I have is, how feasible is using Bitcoin as a currency? And it turns out a small town in El Salvador called El Zonte, also known as Bitcoin Beach, has been experimenting with building a self-sufficient community that operates on Bitcoin. And joining us now is Bitcoin Beach Director Michael Peterson in El Salvador. Welcome, Michael.
Good morning.
So, Michael, I feel like you're in a great position to weigh in on this. What's some of your insights on, the reaction in El Salvador to this news?
No, I think the people in El Salvador are just ecstatic that they're able to kind of lead the way and become the first nation in the world to adopt Bitcoin as an official currency. I think the markets are really underestimating the long-term impact that this is going to have. I think part of that is just because El Salvador is a smaller country, but as those of us in the Bitcoin space know, this is how game theory works. It's one small domino knocks the next and then to the next. And so I think this will go down in the history book as the moment that the financial world was kind of reshaped. And so, yeah, I really think we're going to see this play out over the next year in a way that everybody's underestimating.
Can you tell us a little bit, though, about how actually this works in practice? Because, we definitely are hearing a lot about how this is a watershed moment for finance and the sort of symbolic part of it. But how is this actually going to change things, both in El Salvador and the world?
Well, I think for El Salvador, it allows them to connect to the global economic system and financial system in a way they haven't been able to in the past. As people who have traveled quite a bit know, the world is really kind of segmented. The financial systems are kind of different walled gardens, and so it's hard for people to send funds from one across borders. There's a lot of friction. There's a lot of money that's kind of siphoned off during that time. And so this will allow basically El Salvador to connect to its diaspora, across the world. It'll allow people to send remittances with hardly any fees being involved. and it'll allow El Salvador to really bring Bitcoin jobs into the country. We established Bitcoin Beach about 2 years ago, and we've demonstrated that Bitcoin can really be used in transactional ways. We have a whole community that's transacting in Bitcoin on a daily basis. Probably 90% of the families in our community are using Bitcoin for anything from buying 25 cents worth of tortillas to paying their electric bill. And we've seen that this allows people that have been traditionally unbanked to now have access to digital payments. It allows them to have hope in the future. They can work remotely and be paid by Bitcoin companies in the US and make wages that are significantly higher than they would be able to make locally. And so it's really going to be transformative.
And ostensibly, it will probably be helpful for the government as well. I mean, the government is doing this, I imagine for their own purposes. And recently, there have been some concerns about the current government, in particular about leaning towards authoritarianism. I'm just wondering if you have any take on that, or if this is something that people should be thinking about.
I mean, of course, always we want to make sure that governmental power is kept in check. But I think a lot of the concern has been unwarranted. I think people confuse the popularity of Nayib Bukele for authoritarianism. And I mean, I think he has like 90% approval rate right now in El Salvador. And we've been down there for 17 years, and I've never seen the country, have the hope and the positivity that they have right now. And to have a leader that's kind of, pushing forward, trying to get rid of corruption and problems they've had historically. And so I'd ask people to give them the benefit of the doubt, and let's see how this plays out.
So, Michael, what does this mean, Bitcoin mean right now for the people of El Salvador? How do they view it? What's the sentiment? I know you've got your experiment there, but overall, you go to San Salvador, you walk around, you talk to people. What is their view of it? Is it still something that's kind of like, oh, they know it's there, but it's not something they use in their daily lives, or is it something they're interested? Like, what's the feel there?
I would say, yeah, in the capital city, probably the most of people aren't using it in their daily lives yet, but they're definitely very aware of it. We've been making the news, both internationally, but also nationally. Come pretty much every week, there's another news story coming out of Bitcoin Beach. And so people are very aware of what's happening. They're very aware that for the first time in their life, they have the opportunity to invest in an asset that's going to go up over time rather than go down over time. I think what most people in the US don't realize is for the majority of the world, they don't have access to stocks. They don't have access to other assets that they can use to build wealth. And so for people to suddenly have access to an asset that they can save in, that's going to go up over time instead of going down over time, this is really transformative for them.
That's assuming that it will go up over time. So it's the sentiment that, well, yeah, exactly. I mean, but is the view of it as what exactly? Is it? Are they looking at it as a means of transaction, or are they using it as a store of value?
Both. I mean, they are using it as a means of transaction because for most of them, they don't have any other means other than physical cash. So this is their first chance to be able to make mobile payments. This is the first chance for them to be able to frictionlessly send payments over borders or to receive remittances from family members in the US without having huge fees siphoned off in the process. And so, yes, it's very transactional for them. It's not just digital gold. But it is also digital gold. They have a way that they can save that, they know there's no guarantee it's going to go up in value over time. But you look at its brief history and, obviously it's only 12 years old or 13 years old. So you can't, set too much security in that. But it also has shown that it is continuing to gain traction in the world, and people know how network effects happen. And once that snowball gets rolling, it's going to be very hard for it to stop.
Michael, maybe you can go into Bitcoin Beach a bit. How many people are in the community, and what were some of the barriers to get over in terms of technical knowledge needed to operate a Bitcoin wallet and how to custody your Bitcoin, and how are they dealing with rising transaction fees?
Sure. So actually in El Zonte, where we started, it's a small village, only about 3,000 people. But we've kind of expanded the whole region. So now there's a few 100,000 people that are interacting with Bitcoin on a fairly regular basis. And initially, we we found that we focused too much on the technicalities of Bitcoin, too much on the history, and that was, a little overwhelming to people at first. And we found the best way to get people transacting is just to get them transacting. Let them make their first few transactions, and then they have that kind of aha moment if they're like, wow, this is pretty amazing. For the first time in my life, I can send mobile payments. And initially, we were doing everything on chain, but like you mentioned, because of transaction fees, we found the need to switch to the Lightning Network. And I think even people in the Bitcoin space underestimate where the Lightning Network is at this point. It's very usable. It's very easy to use. We have everybody from 8-year-olds to 88-year-olds that are buying 25 cents worth of tortillas using Bitcoin over the Lightning Network.